Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Double Waved Yellows podcast. We're reviewing the 2022 Bahrain Grand Prix, and as usual, Tyson and Hodders join me once again. Hodders, what a race weekend we had to open the new season up.
We really did. We said that there'd be a new era with the new cars, and boy, did we get a new era that we expected.
Cool stuff. Tyson, it's really weird because we thought we had an idea of where the grid was going to be when we did our preview last weekend, and in some cases we've got it badly wrong.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The new rules, the new regulations, we got some really exciting stuff happening on track, and lots of things happening that we certainly didn't predict.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Well, coming up in tonight's podcast, we are going to discuss Leclerc getting a 1-2, or leading home a 1-2 for Ferrari for the first time in 3 years. Red Bull suffer a double power unit failure in the final 3 laps to wipe them out of the points and put them bottom of the Constructors' Championship. Mercedes salvage a 3-4 after what was a pretty poor weekend. Magnussen bringing home a huge haul of points for Haas. We'll get into all of that a little bit later on. But as always, we go through the support series, and there was plenty Formula 2 and Formula 3 action. Tyson, tell us about it.
Oh, I'll say full race weekend, Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3, so I was very busy this weekend. A lot to cover, so let's just dive straight into it, starting with Formula 3. And a big reworking of the format. Traditionally, Formula 3 has held 3 races in a weekend. Now they're changing to the 2-race format, which is more what we're accustomed to seeing from Formula 2, last year notwithstanding. As usual, Friday practice and qualifying, but now we have the sprint race on the Saturday, and the feature race makes up part of the main event on Grand Prix Sunday. But unlike in Formula 2, there's no mandatory pit stops. It's just 45 minutes of wheel-to-wheel racing. And with so many drivers of various abilities in what's essentially the same spec cars, you're going to get a lot of action. So in qualifying, Franco Colapinto took pole position for the new Van Amersfoort racing team and took the first 2 points of the season. Qualifying down from 4 points last year, but points are still points, and it's always nice to start there. So the way the format works, qualifying sets the starting grid for Sunday's feature race, which is where the big points are, but the starting order for Saturday's sprint race is decided by reversing the top 12 in qualifying. It means even if a driver's a supreme qualifier constantly on the front row, we get to see their overtaking prowess during the races. That meant that Zach O'Sullivan would start on pole position on Saturday with Oliver Behrman alongside him on the front row after both drivers qualified 12th and 11th respectively. Points-wise in the sprint, it's simply 10 for a win, down to 1 for 10th, and 1 point for fastest lap if you finish in the top 10. So, sprint race, a field of 30, and a lot of new drivers finding their feet in their first race at this level, so it was a fairly cautious race. A few incidents here and there, but that's to be expected, and for me, the first time I'm seeing a lot of these drivers, so I was really interested to see how they were going to do. Let's start off with Isaac Hadjar. Started 4th, drove well, made up places to win the sprint, took the 10 points. Oliver Behrman came in with great credentials as both the ADAC Formula 4 and Italian Formula 4 champion of 2021. Finished the race first on track, took the lead from Zach O'Sullivan on lap 5 and went unchallenged from there, but was given a 5-second penalty for exceeding track limits and ended up in 2nd place. This was the real indicator for me that the stewards were not going to be messing around this weekend, which is exactly what we've been asking to see. Alexander Smollett finished 3rd to round off the podium. Also of note, the brother of Charles Leclerc, Arthur Leclerc, now in his 2nd season, finishing 5th, made a great comeback from 14th after a poor qualifying session. Unfortunate look for Victor Martin and Gregoire Saucy. The two ARTs collided in what was really an avoidable incident, and both of them fell out of the points, but it's early days and these things are going to happen. Moving on to Sunday's feature race, much more points on offer, and it showed as we were getting more risky moves in the first couple of laps as drivers tried to improve positions, which did bring out a few safety cars. But it was Victor Martin who made up for what happened in the sprint race by taking P2 at the first safety car restart, bided his time, and then took the lead on lap 15, went on to take the checkered flag and banked 25 well-earned points. And then a big surprise as Arthur Leclerc finished second, making his way all the way through from starting 14th. Just a highlight reel of overtaking moves. Very exciting to watch, and really a good weekend for the Leclerc brothers in general. Rounding off the podium was Greg Marsorsi, who, like his teammate Martin, put Saturday in the rear view and just focused on getting the job done. Other drivers of note, fourth, Jean-Manuel Correa. Really great to see him back on form after that horrific accident he was involved in back in 2019. He had a really good fight with Smolia and well-deserved fourth place. The pole setter, Colapinto, he fought hard but just used up too much of his tyres in defending, pushed it a little bit too much and then fell victim to the track limits and finished fifth. And that's going to be a key element for the new drivers, how to preserve the rubber for a full race distance. Behrman did well to finish in sixth, and an exciting drag race to the line between Jack Crawford and Alexander Smolia. Barely anything in it, and Crawford just taking it by a nose. In the other drivers, Kyle Collette was running really well, but then had to take evasive action to avoid Zane Maloney, who was having issues. Came back across the curb, which unfortunately broke his suspension and put an end to what was looking like a promising race. Elsewhere, Roman Stanek was fighting hard up in P2, but then a puncture at the safety car restart in a battle with Smolia. Bad luck there, and Smolia just seemed to be a magnet for incidents as he also punctured the sprint race winner Isaac Hadjar and took him out of the points. So after the first races, Victor Martin leads after his featured race win with 25 points. He's 1 point ahead of Arthur Leclerc, who's on 24, and Oliver Behrman currently rounds off the top three on 17. In the team's championship, ART come out at the first weekend leading with 54 points. Prema are hot on their heels with 47, and quite a distance behind High Tech on third with 14 points. So a very exciting opening Formula 3 round. We got to see what some of the rookies are going to bring to the field and what some of the familiar names are able to do as well. So far for me, Behrman, Leclerc, Martin, Hadjar, Saucy, they seem to be the ones to keep an eye on this year. The next round of the championship will take place next month at Imola, and much like Bahrain, it'll be the first time Formula 3's visited the circuit, so that's promising to be a fun one. And that takes us to Formula 2, which is taking the same approach as Formula 3, returning to the familiar two-race format. The big difference is that they're taking elements from last year, so again, the sprint is on Saturdays now after Formula 1 qualifying, and the feature race taking place on Sunday just before the Formula 1 main event. Other than that, same as the Formula 3 format, but it's the top 10 qualifiers that are reversed rather than 12 for the sprint. Only the top 8 score points, going 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the feature race involves a mandatory pit stop, which can only be taken after lap 6. And both available compounded tyres, the primes and options, have to be used, which always throws up some interesting strategy options from the various teams. Going into qualifying, Jack Doohan took advantage of a clear track while everyone else was changing tyres in the pits to set the first pole position of the year and taking 2 points. And for those of you who like your factoids, a Univirtuosi driver has taken pole position in the opening round 4 seasons in a row. Doohan this year, Joe Guan Yu in 2021 and 2020, and Luca Ghiotto in 2019. Felipe Drogovic ended up qualifying in 10th, and Richie Verschoor in 9th, which meant they'd be taking off from the front row of the grid in the sprint race. And Verschoor instantly took the lead in the sprint and held on to it for the duration, took the 10 points fairly easily. Johan Deruvela had a great battle with Ralph Oshon for second place, both of them just trading back and forth over a couple of laps. Great clean racing by the pair of them. Deruvela eventually got the better of the exchange and finished in second. Oshon had to settle for fourth in the end, fought hard all the way, but that did open the door for Liam Lawson right behind to swoop in and take third in the last few laps. Very well deserved, as he himself defended hard from fourth the whole race until it was time to attack. Drogovic unfortunately had a really bad start from pole and fell down the order rapidly. Had to play catch-up from there and finished fifth. Teo Pocher potentially a contender for the championship this year, lost out at the safety car restart after Marcus Armstrong was spun around by Jake Hughes and then retired from mechanical issues. And a really impressive showing from Ayum Iwasa, who started dead last and managed to claw his way up into the final points paying position, finishing 8th. That brings us on to the feature race, and this was very much a Formula 2 race in every aspect. Incidents, collisions, hard racing, overtaking, everything you expect from the series, just fast and frantic. When it was all said and done, Théo Pourchaire made up for his disappointment on Saturday and took the win and 25 points. Liam Lawson took second by virtue of just avoiding everything that was happening all around him. Yuri Vips took the final spot on the podium, running so well early on, got that Mario Kart rocket start into the lead off the line, but a disastrous pit stop that cost him so much time and potentially the race win. Speaking of rocket starts, Ralph Bachon followed Vips with one of those from the line. They had a great battle from the lead at the start. He settled down and had a good race to finish 4th. Unfortunate for Jack Doohan, who was running well, but then made contact with Théo Pourchaire coming out of the pits and undid all of his good work up to that point. He managed to salvage the last point by finishing 10th. Another impressive showing from Iwasa, who started last once again and was actually leading the race at one point after making yet another set of great overtaking moves throughout the race. Was on track to score some nice points, but then car issues after the final safety car restart dropped him down the order. And speaking of that safety car, it caused all manner of mayhem. There was a mad dash for the pits to put soft tyres on with just a couple of laps to go for the restart. Both Dennis Hauger and Callum Williams ended up leaving their box with 3 wheels attached. Just careless work in the pits, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some fines handed down on safety grounds, because our cars parked in the fast lane of the pits and the other cars having to thread the needle to navigate them. Definitely not what you want to see. And as a result of all that, the race ended a lap early as all the incidents took us up to the 1 hour time limit. So the Drivers' Championship after the opening round. Théo Pourchaire leads after his feature race win on 25 points. Liam Lawson's consistent weekend sees him 1 point behind on 24. Yuri Vips is in 3rd with 18 points. Ralph Bachon right behind on 17. And Felipe Drogovic rounds up the top 5 with 12 points. In the Teams' Championship, Carlin are currently leading on 33 points. High-Tech in 2nd with 28, and ART in 3rd on 25. Campos 4th with 17, and MP 5th with 12. Disappointing weekend for Prema, who we're used to seeing near the top. They'll be looking to improve in the next race, and they don't have to wait long as round 2 takes place in less than a week in Jeddah. We got to see some of the potentials of the rookies in Bahrain, but they just need to tidy things up a little bit and avoid all the traditional mayhem that we're used to seeing in Formula 2. But as we know, Jeddah's a fast street circuit, so it's promising to be an exciting one. Looking forward to it.
Good stuff. Thanks very much, Tyson. Yeah, certainly some wacky racing going on in particular for the Formula 2. But yeah, it's what we love to see. Good solid overtaking. Obviously, for those who are not aware, Formula 2, Formula 3, they all have the same identical chassis and engine, so it is purely down to the best driver and obviously the best tactics from the teams. Yeah, in respect of those pit stops where you only got 3 wheels, I'm pretty sure that they will be not only a team fine, but I think it's also a 10-place grid penalty for the drivers. I know that is certainly the case in Formula 1 because it's something they are very, very hot on. And let's face it, 3 wheels just doesn't quite work. I mean, I know, we all remember Schumacher at Spa in '98 after he hit Coulthard. I mean, I think at some point he was actually faster on the track on 3 wheels, getting back to the pit lane. But I think, I think that was a bit different.
We're not racing Reliant Robins, you know. We're not Reliant, trying to avoid them.
Don't. Yeah, Reliant Robin Grand Prix. I might pay to receive that. But so Cool, great stuff. Well, before we get into the main action of Formula One, today W Series announced their driver lineup. We were obviously speculating about it last week during our preview podcast. But Hodders, you have the information on the driver lineup for the W Series. Take it away.
I do indeed. Following all the pre-season tests that took place at the Indy Motorsports Ranch in Arizona, as well as the Circuit Barcelona Catalunya in Spain, of course. Dave Ryan, earlier this afternoon, it took me a while to read it, of course, I've been away. They've selected 9 drivers to join the 8 women who'd already qualified automatically for the 3rd season of the W Series by warrant of finishing top 8 last year. So last year, I've already announced in the preview, we've got Jamie Chadwick, we have Emma Kimmerleinen, Nerea Marti, Sarah Moore, Alice Powell, Abby Pulling, Beitske Visser and Fabienne Volvend returning. We've got a few familiar faces returning in the 9 drivers that have been announced. 4 of them were there last year, namely everyone's favourite bobble hat wearing driver Jessica Hawkins, Belen and Marta Garcia, no relation, and also Brazilian driver Bruna Tomaselli. They did confirm that Ira Sudakova will not be competing in the W Series until further notice because current events. Interesting to note, the 5 new drivers all have some racing pedigree between them. First off is the Czech driver Tereza Babičková. Now, I had to do a very quick bit of Googling before the podcast due to having been busy all afternoon work-wise, but it appears that she was doing quite well on the international circuit's karting last year. And she's also one of 3 sisters who indulge in karting as well, so a bit of a racing family there. Second, we have Bianca Bustamante, well known in the Philippines and internationally as well, 17 years old, shows some great promise. We then have Chloe Chambers, 17-year-old American driver, as seen on TV in America a couple of weeks ago on America's Got Talent Extreme. She also spent a full season last year participating in the US Formula 4. Thought it was one of the cheapest Formula 4s to get into. She only scored a point, but nevertheless, she was in there as one of 2 female drivers. There was also a Brit in there who scored a few points as well. The 4th driver in there, a well-known name at least in other fields, Emily de Heijs. 19-year-old Dutch driver who has raced in other series as well. And incidentally, the De Heijs name is well known internationally, and particularly in the Netherlands, as a family business for 100 years. This is not a plug, who have been importing and exporting tractors. They've even featured on some of her racing attire as well. And last and certainly not least, the driver that I thought could well be in, and what a reception she will get in Suzuka, 16-year-old Japanese driver Juju Noda, who would have spent a couple of rounds in the Formula 4 US last season, but didn't. Boy, is she going to show get a lot of fans no matter what happens in Japan. The pairings will be announced in due course, and incidentally, that's the 17. You're wondering, why hasn't Hodders mentioned the 18th driver? Well, it's been decided this year that for each race, the 18th position will remain almost, you could almost say, as a guest spot for reserve drivers and those who did well in test events. So it's keeping it as a bit of an open shop. Reserve drivers in due course, and we'll see how things go before Miami, which is, well, not far away.
Yeah, only a couple of months away from Miami, and that'll be a great venue to start the 3rd series of the W Series. And yeah, I hate to say it, I did call it last week when we thought we might see Juju Noda in. I think, without obviously checking records, she will clearly be the youngest W Series driver ever.
I think she probably will. Other than Abby Pulling and Ira Sudakova, I think she probably will.
Yeah, so fantastic stuff, and it's great to see more of this promising talent emerging from all around the world. Yep. And we can't wait to see it supporting the Formula 1 race weekends. Cool. Good stuff. Thank you very much, Hodders, for that. And of course, as we've mentioned it, let's get on to the main race weekend. And yet, what a weekend we had to open the Formula 1 season. So let's get straight into our driver focus. So after last week's podcast, Hodders selected 3 drivers for all of us to keep a wary eye on throughout the weekend. So I will go first with my one. And so first out of the hat for me was Lewis Hamilton. Now I was thinking, okay, the runner-up for the championship, 7-time world champion. a bit uncomfortable. Hamilton said he wasn't going to be competing for wins, and for once, he wasn't joking. P5 in qualifying, 6/10 of a second off of the pole position. He only managed to salvage a podium finish as a result of the double Red Bull failure. Tyson, I'll come to you first. Hamilton will be thanking his lucky start he got on the podium because he was not expecting to be anywhere near that.
Absolutely. Even from Friday practice, it really looked like Mercedes were just struggling with all the bouncing of the car, the porpoising as it's been coined. But yeah, great effort by Hamilton to put it up on the podium because it was looking rough for a little bit there.
Yeah, not the best that we've seen there, and hopefully, Hamilton will be wanted to claw that gap back fairly quickly because we know, with the big gaps in the points, 25 for a win, 18 for second. That gap can very quickly, if you have poor reliability, you can often be 2 full races behind on the points, as we did see at various points last year. Hodders, will move on to you next for your first choice, and one of the sort of the pink cars back on the grid, albeit just temporarily for the first 2 races. Esteban Ocon.
Absolutely, and from a team that I'm keeping a small eye, not backing, but keeping an eye on others from Alpine. Ocon didn't have a terrible qualifying. He did finish P11 in qualifying, but he was only 65 thousandths of a second adrift of the top 10, so not too far off of the talented Frenchman. In the race himself, well, he didn't get off to the most auspicious start. Clipping the back of Mick Schumacher's car on turn 5 of lap 1, for which he got the only racing penalty of the entire race, a 5-second penalty, which he duly served. And eventually, thanks to the safety car and other factors, he managed to parlay into a very respectable 7th place.
Yeah, I say the only penalty, and I think given it's lap 1, the stewards do tend to show a bit of leniency. I think it was, when we saw it, was a pretty slam dunk one, given he's Schumacher's done a 360 in front of the whole pack behind him, which is usually a bit sort of squeaky bum time. But yeah, 7th place, not too bad. Yeah, Tyson, a reasonable haul of points there for Ocon.
Yeah, it was a good result for the Alpine, and that's exactly how I expected them to start the season, to be honest.
Good stuff. And moving on to... Oh, I feel so sorry reading this. Oh, dear. Now, when he did the draw, and when Tyson did the draw, and this was his first drive, I thought, okay, this will be a good weekend. Right, instead of Lando, it's Land. Oh no!
Oh no! Oh no!
We feel your pain, Tyson. Take it away.
Yeah, what else could I really say? Just a miserable weekend for the McLarens, which completely blew up my expectations and predictions. So, yeah, especially after the big strides and the improvements we've seen in the last few years, it's got to be really frustrating to them to go from a potentially race-winning car to racing around at the back. And they have got a temporary fix, but it's going to be so fundamental to the running of the car. I'm just not really hopeful for the next few races. But Norris, he's got to get his head down, do what he can until then, wait for the permanent fix to come in, where hopefully we can see the true potential of the car. But yeah, not the start of the season that he would have wanted.
Yeah, and Hodder, as we'll cover later on, I don't think it's necessarily just the fault of the McLaren chassis. We know that the Mercedes power unit this weekend has just been absolutely woeful, and also Lando has had really bad race weekends, and he's got that resilience in him to fight back, to bounce back. So there is optimism there.
Yeah. For both McLarens, I think this will be seen not only as a bit of a wake-up call of really spoke your I think it's also a bit of a humbling of it's not really the same as last season. Let's face it, Lando Norris had a stunning start to the season last year. Might just temper his expectations. He is capable. It's just a case of realizing there's a long way to go and not much time to get that long way through.
Indeed, so. And sticking with the McLaren theme, my second drive driver choice, and it doesn't rain, but it pours. Danny Ricciardo, ouch. Knocked out in qualifying 1 for the first time since Turkey last year, although that was a wet qualifying session. I think he also had just one other Q1 exit last year. He clawed his way up to 14th, finishing just ahead of his teammate, but I think had it not been for the 2 Red Bulls and Gauss's AlphaTauri retiring, he'd have been down in 17th, and that is just not where we expect McLaren to be. Tyson, this was a pretty painful weekend for McLaren in general.
Yeah, and I think with Ricardo, it was always going to be rough. He had COVID during testing, so he didn't get as much running, and then the issues in practice. So I think under the circumstances, he just did what he could.
Yep, that's what you can do, I guess. Moving on to your second driver's Hodders, a driver we've warmly welcomed back to the grid, and he had an okay weekend. The Thai driver, born in London, as Sky Sports tend to highlight pretty much every race, Alex Albon.
Indeed, and also pleasing to note that following all of the Court of Arbitration Sport have decided, we weren't sure if he was going to be under the Thai flag, but it is pleasing to know that he is, because we were wondering whether he'd have to be neutral or not after all the CAS investigations in time that have seemed to have cleared them. But I digress. Alex Albon, again, for Williams, not bad. I mean, not to downplay Williams at all, but again, very reasonable considering the new era. Qualified in 14th, but he was quite off the pace, unlike Esteban Ocon, who was only a few millimetres away from getting into Q2. He was quite a bit off the pace, though a little bit ahead of Guan Yu Zhou, or Zhou Guan Yu, I should say, either or. He was towards the back of the field for lots of the races, both Williamses were, although it did seem like the ability to run lap through the safety car certainly helped things out, and then changing onto the soft tyres did seem to pay off, and he did finish in a very respectable 12th.
Yeah, not bad. And I say, we'll go into a bit more detail later on, but I think any car that had a Mercedes in the back of their car just did not have a good weekend. So we'll go into a bit more. Tyson, on to you next. And for the bad weekend that Lando had, probably one of our absolute stars of the race weekend was Kevin Magnussen. What a race!
Absolutely, the Viking Magnussen. Always been a favourite of mine, and a really great pickup for Haas after being such a late replacement. He was on holiday 2 weeks before, so practice, I just started thinking he's running up there. This Haas has got some pace, and he showed that. He qualified really well, and then very much held his own with the big 3 teams during the race itself, even alluding afterwards that he could have fought Russell, but he'd just rather keep the position he had and bank the points. And I think a few teams, they may need to worry about that if that is the case.
And Tyson, I think it's fair to say there's probably a certain driver who did drive for Haas last year who will be really kicking himself in terms of the situation that he's in. That could have been him.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh well. Yeah, absolutely. And Hodders, we've got to say we were sort of semi-hyping Haas up all throughout last season. We knew they weren't going to do any work on their 2021 car. We knew it was all being put into 2022 car. And my goodness me, what a car they've got.
Absolutely. I mean, I was keeping an eye at a distance due to other things during the weekend in practice and qualifying. I knew that Haas would do better, but when I saw Kevin Magnussen, I thought, okay, my jaw it may have taken a lot of effort to pick my jaw off the floor at Haas qualifying top 10 and thinking, and I thought, hang on, could they? It was there I actually thought, you know what? Haas have got a chance. I said Haas would get points, but hey, first race of the season.
And is it inconceivable?
A very pleasant surprise.
Yeah, and is it inconceivable to think that we could, depending on weird circumstances, we could have both Haas's in the top 10 at some point this season.
I think it.
And also, if you had, let's face it, Formula One, it does throw up those weird and wacky races sometimes. A Haas on the podium?
It's not impossible. It's not impossible.
Why not?
Very possible.
If you said to me this time last year that Alpine would win a race, well, there we go.
Well.
So why not? We will definitely keep
Never
an
say
eye.
Never.
You just said it twice there, but there we go. Back round to me. So my third and final selection. I didn't really get a good selection this week. Lance Stroll.
Yes.
Make sure I get that. Qualifying on the back row, finished P12. Tyson, not really much to write home about there.
No, not a lot much to say, and I think Aston Martin, they just have to really do what they can at this point, try and end up in the points-paying positions.
Absolutely. And Hodders on to your third selection, and again, we are talking about a very promising young driver on debut, scoring points. Zhou Guanyu, please tell us all about him.
And from the same constant as last year as Zhou Guanyu had a good start in practice. On debut, he did finish 15th and was quite a bit off the pace in Q2, but nevertheless, the young Chinese driver was quite pleased with that on his Twitter account. He was quite pleased with it, and just, I think he was taking everything with a touch of humility. First drive, not a huge amount of pressure. And, well, he was pushing, even from early in the race, he was pushing quite well against other drivers with the overtakes. And when he was passing other drivers using DRS, there was quite an element of skill in there that you wouldn't normally expect from an F1 debutant, but he's clearly got the DRS pretty much nailed so far. And, as you said, finished P10 after all that went on, becoming the 66th driver in F1 history to score points on debut, the 65th having been Yuki Tsunoda in Bahrain last year.
Fantastic stuff. Tyson, we love seeing these promising, exciting young drivers through the field. We saw obviously, Tsunoda in Formula 2 in 2020. We saw Zhou Guanyu in Formula 2 in 2021. This is another really exciting drive, and we're going to have to keep an eye on these drivers that are coming through the Formula 2 field, because we could be seeing some interesting drivers next year.
Absolutely. You never know who's going to come up and be the next Formula One megastar. But this is exactly what Joe needed. He had a good, solid outing, and he got some real experience under his belt this weekend, and that's exactly what he needs right now.
Yep, absolutely. And as you say, he's got that sort of humble sort of atmosphere around him, which that's only going to help to serve him well. And obviously, because he's at Alfa Romeo, I don't really think there is the expectation to be scoring points on a regular basis. So this is a really good start for both Zhou Guanyu and the team as a whole. And Tyson, back to you for your final one. And I'll tell you what, you got the absolute pick of the bunch here. The pole sitter and the race winner, Charles Leclerc.
Yep, the only thing I can say is the Ferrari is legit this year.
Yep.
Everybody else was having those pole-posting issues, but that Ferrari looked absolutely planted all weekend. Charles Leclerc, pole position, which was the first one for Ferrari in the opening race since 2007, 15 years. He had a really great fight versus Max Verstappen as well. After the initial pit stops, they were just going back and forth, trading the lead. They said the cars could follow this year. We certainly saw that. And Ferrari, they've had a few years where there was a bit of uncertainty in the team. Things would go wrong. Results weren't being delivered. As a result, fingers were being pointed, head would roll. They got a great package this year and just two immensely talented drivers. This, it very much looks like it could be their year.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a stat on social media during the weekend that every time Ferrari has won the opening race from pole position, they have gone on to win the championship. That is a very ominous statistic. And Hodders, with the pace and the consistency they showed throughout the race weekend, you wouldn't bet against it.
I think you would be... I won't say you'd be misguided to think that Ferrari are not capable. I think this is the start of... They may not... I think they could win the construction. Even if they don't, I think they're going to have a very good crack at it. Ferrari are back, as Haas demonstrated with the Ferrari engines as well. Ferrari are back, and they mean business.
I'll tell you what, it's not... it's got to be worth mentioning. we're about a month away from heading back to a little place called the Circuit Enzo Edino Ferrari, the
Oh,
Imola
yes.
circuit, and
Oh.
oh my goodness, that could
Oh,
be
yes.
something quite spectacular. So cool, lovely stuff. Thank you very much, guys. So as usual, back onto our winners and spinners. So we each choose a driver who has had a race weekend to remember. And we also choose one who has had a weekend to forget. And it's not necessarily the driver. We may go for another element within the sport. And for me, my winner of the weekend, it has to be Kevin Magnussen. I know, poor joke. That's another one. Just a simply brilliant result. You know, if someone had said to Gunther Steiner after Abu Dhabi last year, you'll finish 5th and 12th on your first weekend, he'd have thought, what on earth have you been drinking? But yeah, you know, K-Max his best results since 2018 in Austria, and Tyson, we could clearly see the joy on social media from Haas, from Kevin Magnussen, and especially his little daughter sitting in the cockpit as well. That it was brilliant scenes.
Yeah, that was great to see, and I'm right there with you. The winner, I have to give it to Magnussen myself. Yeah, he wasn't even intended to run this year. The car last year, complete write-off. But this is just the dream return to Formula One that Magnussen needed, and I'm hoping to see more of that this year.
And Hodders, I guess it makes up for the door he smashed a few years ago.
As far as I'm concerned, he can smash as many doors as he likes after that. He's got the right to do it now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Tyson, obviously, you mentioned it. Yeah, he was your race winner or your weekend winner as well.
Yep, and just go back to what I said previously. I can't add much more to that.
Yeah, superb. And we might as well keep the good feeling. It's pretty much a clean sweep. Hodders, you didn't just necessarily go for Magnussen, but you went for the Haas team as well.
I was going to go for Magnussen, but I actually thought, you know what? After all that's been gone through in the last couple of months with all the obviously current events, people wondering whether Haas would even make it to the grid, would even make it to the grid and survive. The word that springs to mind more than anything else is redemption. I mean, let's face it, last year, and maybe the year before slightly as well, Haas had become almost the laughing stock of Formula One. I think there was a preview at one point about people mocking that Haas had the budget of something like 60 pence and a Mars bar, which I think was a bit harsh. But I predicted that Haas might get points, and I was proven right. And if anything, what a joy it was to see Haas celebrating like that, showing that they are serious, which I think they always were. But I think anyone who was mocking Haas last year will be eating a very large slice of humble pie with chips more than anything else. Honestly, I know I didn't join the watch along the stream, but I almost wanted to physically applaud them. And I think they absolutely deserve all the credit they're getting at the moment. They've survived. They stuck it out last year, and they have really shown that they are a serious, at the very least, mid-table contender this year.
Yeah, they're going to really mix it up in there. We should also mention, obviously, we've given a lot of praise to Kevin Magnussen, rightly so, but also his teammate, Mick Schumacher. He had a really good weekend.
Yeah. He finished 11th, which is his best finish ever in Formula One, and I think he may well get in the points for sure this season. He's now got the car that he did well. Let's face it, he did well in what was frankly a terrible Formula One car last year. But in this car, who knows?
Yeah, that's going to be really good. So that is obviously our 3 winners, but unfortunately we do have to have 3 spinners as well. And Tyson, for you, yeah, Red Bull may give you wings, but I wouldn't put it in
a car.
It doesn't any good for your car.
Yeah, just not a good weekend for Red Bull at all. Both drivers retiring, and they just lost a haul of points to reliability issues. We saw this last year. This could be very crucial in the championship fight, especially considering how strong Ferrari are looking. And Verstappen, he just seemed to be really agitated the whole race. We heard the radio rant. We could hear from his tone rapidly increasing pace, just how panicked he was getting. He needs to keep a cool head and not let these things get to him. But yeah, horrendous start to Red Bull season, but there's plenty of races for them to catch up, so hopefully we'll see that in the future.
And Hodders, it wasn't just restricted to the sort of the primary Red Bull team. Any car that had a Red Bull engine in the back didn't really last that long, unless obviously, Yuki Tsunoda, but Gasly's car breaking down, catching fire, and triggering the safety car,
which took us all by surprise because we saw it quite late. But it's not the thing you want to see. It was almost a domino. Credit that Yuki Tsunoda's car kept going, and that's not a dig on the engines at all. I mean, he's a good, reliable driver, but again, for 3 Red Bull powered engines out of 4 to go, to completely, essentially fail in one race shows serious reliability concerns, and that's not what you want to see. It really isn't. It was painful to see at the same time. I mean, both Red Bulls had raced. They weren't at their best, but Perez as well was racing extremely well. He wasn't a sacrificial lamb to Verstappen at any point. He was having a good race, and then he just stopped, and we were all shocked.
Yeah, and obviously, this weekend coming up, the Jeddah circuit. It's a very high speed circuit, so
we do not want anything like that to happen because that will cause several safety cars, if not more.
Yeah, so hopefully. They find some sort of temporary solution before obviously they get back to the European rounds. Hodders, I'll stay with you, and it's probably, we've given them a bit of a dick, but your spinner of the weekend, not really surprising, was the McLaren team.
In some ways, I felt I didn't really have a choice. I mean, to go for the likes of Aston Martin would have been cruel, or any of the Mercedes would have been quite cruel, because let's face it, Mercedes themselves, they felt they could have done better, Mercedes themselves, over the weekend, but they still had third and fourth quite looking together, but they still had respectable positions. But McLaren were the completely opposite to what we were expecting, and I'm sure, and I know Tyson was absolutely hurting, I think he'd still feel it now, and that's not digging the team at all, it's very, very concerning when a team that we all said in the preview, we thought would be up there. And the fact of the matter is that right now, in the Constructors' Championships, they're 9th. They scored 0 points, and the drivers just did not perform. I'm sure the drivers are very good. When you've got drivers like Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo, who are good drivers, don't get me wrong, I think it's more. I think it might be the engine more than the drivers themselves. I mean, I do wonder whether this weekend Danny Rick and Lando were making the best of what they had. It's worrying.
Oh, it's
really, really worrying when they were doing so well last season.
Yeah, I mean, it was a complete shock for all of us to. Yeah, often practice is a little bit deceiving. We've often seen the likes of Red Bull and Mercedes in previous years just sort of not have a great practice 1, practice 2, but then the Saturday they just find the form and they're there. But McLaren were just nowhere this weekend, which is an absolute shock. One thing I will say, and I think this does need to be said, some of the comments that we have seen aimed at not just the McLaren team and the drivers, but individual members of staff at McLaren are just absolutely appalling, and that is not acceptable. And like a lot of Twitter users that we've come across, they are not only calling people out, they are reporting, and they are there's mass reporting to the Twitter authorities and blocking, and to Twitter's credit, they are doing something about it. So just we can't say it enough. Just please think of what you are typing before you hit that send button. Would you say it to that person's face? If you wouldn't, don't type it. Simple as that.
Absolutely.
End rant. And onto my spinner, and we have just basically any car that had a Mercedes donkey in the back. It was a donkey.
A very lame one at that.
There's no covering up, because at one point the last 6 cars, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, were all Mercedes powered cars. That is an embarrassment. There is no other way of phrasing it, and that has to change. I don't know if, especially with engine development being frozen, this might be really, really awkward for not only the cars who've got that Mercedes engine in the back, but also the constructors got the 3-pointed star on the front of the car. So, yeah, not comfortable. And obviously, as I said, we've got a high-speed circuit coming up in Jeddah this weekend, so that may expose just how underpowered or otherwise the power unit is. But we will see. So, honourable mentions, we always try to look at to give one or two out. And I think firstly we will start by a former Mercedes driver, Valtteri Bottas. He out-qualified and nearly outrace his Mercedes replacement. Hodders, where did this come from?
I think it's a combination both of the car and the driver. I mean, let's face it, Valtteri is a very, very seasoned driver, and okay, he wasn't perfect in his last season or two at Mercedes with the car, but it shows he is more. I think that's a lot of him as well as the car improvements as well. But again, he is not. We thought he might, occasionally compete for points, but to be that strong in qualifying in the race, he exceeded our not massively. He exceeded our expectations, which is good to see. But we didn't expect George Russell to be out. I mean, I know George Russell is settling into the Mercedes car. Credit where credit's due, but it was still a surprise.
Yeah, and
to be out qualified by 3 places by somebody who was in that car.
Yeah,
before.
just crazy. And Tyson, it's good to see that the two teams that were last, and it wasn't an even close run thing. They were a long way off the pace. Where on earth have they come from? This has just made this season. Yeah, we could easily have all 10 teams scoring a bucket load of points this year.
Oh yeah,
yeah. This was yet another pleasant surprise just to see the pace that the Alpha had in practice. I think Bottas right now, he just really needs to work on his start to the races because he fell down the order quite significantly and was fortunate that the safety car brought him back into the point eight positions at the end. I think if he manages to sort that out, we're going to see that Alpha right up there.
Again, we could see some surprise results. Other honours we have given him a mention. I think we, rightly should give him another one. Zhou Guanyu, points on debut, a really good, solid debut weekend, Tyson. And what was really, really good, also very calm, very sort of humble about everything. I think he wasn't expecting it. He just had a really good, solid weekend, and I'm looking forward to see how he goes now for the rest of the season.
Yep, likewise. It's his first season. This is his time to get experience, and he's got a good car to do it with.
And Hodders, hopefully, I can't actually remember what the situation is, but hopefully we will see the Chinese Grand Prix back on the grid, because if it is back on the grid, my goodness me, is this kid going to get a lot of support?
He's getting support. I mean, he's already getting support in every quarter, but in the most populous country in the world, which has what? About a fifth of the population. Why not? I would love to see a Chinese Grand Prix with a Chinese driver.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he's showing a lot of promise, and I agree with you. His calm, humble demeanour, it's refreshing. It really is.
Yeah.
It's nice to see.
Absolutely. Love to see it. Right, so on to a few of the talking points. And I think, first and foremost, Tyson, Ferrari are back and with a bang. This wasn't just a fluky win. This was a dominant 1-2 finish from the moment the lights went green for qualifying.
Yep, absolutely. As I said before, they just looked on form all weekend. Practice, qualifying, the race. Ferrari, yep, they're going to bring it this year.
Mm-hmm. And Hodders, I'm thinking right in thinking that this was the Grand Chelem, I think it's called, where basically Leclerc fastest lap, the race win, pole position, and led every single lap.
He did. Even with pit stops and he still led. I think pit stops notwithstanding, he did lead those laps.
Incredible, great stuff. And actually, for those who can remember, it was redemption for what happened in 2019. He was on course to win the race in 2019 and quite comfortably, and literally 10 laps from the end, his power unit just basically coughed. And I think the only reason he got on the podium was basically a safety car 3 laps from the end. Otherwise, he was tumbling down the order. So, yeah, great redemption for not just actually for 2019, but also for his home race last year. And I tell you, if he keeps this momentum, into Monaco. Oh my.
Oh,
Which would be really, really good. And just some general talking points now. And Hodders, I'll come to you first on this one. It appears with the new technical regulation, the new design of the car, this has much been hyped up for the last 2 or 3 years. These new cars, they can follow each other closely and they can overtake.
and as we saw this season, they can overtake very well. I mean, look at the likes of Kevin and Guan Yu Zhou, some very, very nice passes overall. I mean, another example, look at the battles on turns between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc at the front, changing order a couple of times in a couple of turns during DRS. They really can follow. And again, another thing that's worth noting is I think we had 30-odd laps until a driver got lapped, which in previous seasons would have been unthinkable.
Yeah. In fact, you get over half distance before one of the cars gets lapped.
And even then, it's just a case of, I mean, we didn't have as many DRS trains or pelotons. There weren't that many close pelotons as before, but the spread wasn't too bad.
No. So you didn't get to use your peloton for
drivers did, and it is possible for a driver towards the back, safety car or not, to claw it back, and it did happen.
Yeah, I mean, because of that safety car, we did actually, properly get all the cars back on the lead lap. So that was all good. Tyson, something we've stumbled across, I think on the Sunday evening, and I mean, this wasn't an official release by the FIA to the press. I think it was primarily to the teams, but obviously BBC have got a hold of it. It's there's now some sort of overtaking guidelines that have been issued to the teams and the drivers.
Yeah, I haven't seen the official thing that BBC put out, but I did get some notes on this myself. So the new Formula One race director, Neil Splitters, he told the teams that he's not going to be asking the drivers to give the place back for gaining an advantage, as we've seen previously. Now, the teams themselves have to decide themselves if they're in the wrong, and they may be penalised if they get this wrong, because there's going to be no more radio debate with race control like we saw last year, and if the team decides not to give the place back, they can tell race control why and, in effect, state their defence, as it were, if the stewards decide to review it. The driver has to give the place back within a lap, and also as part of the racing rules discussion, if two cars are alongside each other at the apex, the driver on the inside has to give room to the car on the outside, as in leaving a car's width and not easing him off the road, which, again, is manoeuvres that we've seen in the past, and it's just good to finally get all this cleared up now, what is and what isn't allowed in terms of racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hodders, it's good that everyone, the drivers, the teams, and more importantly, the fans, have clarity on what is and what isn't allowed. And it's not, I don't think any of this is ambiguous. It's very, very clear there what's permitted.
Absolutely. Everything is crystal clear. Everybody knows. And it is nice to see that the onus is on drivers and teams to do it. I mean, race directors are busy enough during the race days it is. It's nice that the teams are taking some personal responsibility and accountability for that. And again, having the clarity is what everyone wanted previously and everyone now has it. Nobody can argue, there's no ambiguity.
Yeah. And I think an example that's been given is basically the incident between Verstappen and Lewis at Brazil last year, where maybe Verstappen eased Hamilton off, depending on your point of view. I think they're basically saying with that one, that would have been an absolute slam dunk penalty for Verstappen, because that is just an absolute no-no. And lastly, and this is a surprise talking point, I did hint at it at the start of the podcast, and I can't remember the last time this happened. Red Bull last in the Constructors' Championship.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just astounded I'm saying that.
Third.
That's crazy. It is just absolutely crazy. And as we're talking about the championship stands, we may as well go through them. To start off with, so Charles Leclerc, maximum points, 26 points. At the top of the standings, Carlos Sainz on 18, Lewis Hamilton on 15, George Russell on 12, Kevin Magnussen P5. What?
Yes.
On 10 points, Valtteri Bottas 6th, Alfa Romeo on 8 points, Esteban Ocon 6, Yuki Tsunoda on 4, again scoring at Bahrain. A good solid performance. Fernando with L Plan on 2 points, and Zhou Guanyu rounding out the top 10. So in terms of the constructors, Ferrari, again, maximum points, 44 points. Mercedes, not far behind on 27 points. Haas on 10. Alfa Romeo 9. Alpine 8. AlphaTauri 4. And then we've got 4 teams who are yet to score. Aston Martin, Williams, and McLaren on 0. And Red Bull at the bottom also on 0. But obviously... all teams did actually get at least one car classified, so we haven't got a situation where we haven't got an NC next to them in the standings. Right, just before we round this up, Hodders, you're going to let us know which 3 drivers we're all going to be focusing on for this weekend's Saudi Arabia Grand Prix in Jeddah. So take it away.
Yep, and I'm about to do it L Live as well. So well, as we start, as I did the draw off screen last time, beginning with Matt the Ref, it seems anything that I start this time. Okay, random.org. First number coming up. Oh, that'll do.
And just to explain how this works, so
yes,
yeah,
certainly.
we all pick 3 drivers to follow throughout the race weekend. The only sort of clause is, if you like, that we can't have the same driver for 2 consecutive weekends. So, for example, just looking back at the notes, so I can't have Hamilton, Ricciardo, or Stroll. Hodders is not allowed to have Ocon, Albon, or Zhou, and Tyson can't have Norris, Magnussen, or Leclerc. So, Hodders, who have you got as your first pick?
I'll also point out that it's always 1 to 20, and at least apart from last week, it was based on an alphabetical order. This time it is based on their position in the championship standings. Also, I'll also point out that if there is a reserve driver or otherwise, then what I will do, if there's been a reserve driver in that position, at least to begin with, that's what I'll use. So, for example, Seb Vettel in this situation will be number 17, because that's where Hulkenberg is.
Okay.
More than anything else. Mm-hmm. Okay, so my first number is number 4, and that's George Russell.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
No, I'll take that.
Yeah, that's not bad.
So we'll go on to Tyson second. What we do also is we tend to rotate who goes first, second, third each time. So whoever was first the previous race is third next time. So Tyson's next up, and random.org is giving us... can't have it. That was Leclerc. We've already got him. Okay, next up is number 8. You've got Yuki Tsunoda.
Oh, nice one.
Okay,
good stuff.
Write it down the post-it notes. I've got it to hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're on to Matt the Ref, and the first number is number 15. You've got Mr. Lando Caden Norris.
Lando.
Yes, we might go operatic next time. Okay, we'll see. Okay, well that's 13. I've already had Alan, so I can't have him again.
Nope.
That'll do. Well, I had one Alfa Romeo last weekend. This time I've got the other one, Valtteri Bottas.
Oh, not bad.
Not at
Not
all.
a bad result.
Okay, Tyson's second one is number 9, El Plan himself, Fernando Alonso.
Ah.
We go on to Matt's third. Well, the third one for this round, and then on to Matt. You can tell I'm not scripted this. Number 16, Nicholas Latifi.
Okay.
So you've got 15th and 16th so far. Oh, ye little faith.
Oh, dear. I think I might have to be making changes to my F1 fantasy team at some point.
Okay, and my third driver. Oh, I've got a Haas this time. A certain Mr. Mick Schumacher.
Oh, okay. That's not bad.
Okay. Now, of course, I'll go through who we've got at the end. We've got all 3. Random.org. The third one for Tyson is... Let's try and get rid of all the repeats, of which there are many. One, having to re-roll so many times like you would not believe.
But of course, there's sort of 7 drivers that have been taken out of the mix, plus the 3 you had last week. So it does get a bit...
Yes, exactly. Oh, speaking of which, number 17 for Tyson. So... In this situation, it's Nico Hulkenberg, but assuming he's back, that will be Sebastian Vettel.
Okay.
Assuming he's back, which I imagine he will be, I'll put an asterisk just in case.
Yeah.
But in the event he doesn't, then... But of course, in the event that... I will point out that with the draw, if there is a driver who is out due to COVID or otherwise, then the reserve driver would take their place for the purpose of the draw. So we've got Matt's final one to go. Let's have a look. You've already got Lando.
Just don't give me number 19. Do not give me.
What you have got number 2.
Oh, Carlos Sainz. I will
Sainz.
take that. Thank you
Nice.
very much.
Okay, so I can confirm from the top that Matt for this weekend has got Lando Norris, Nicholas Latifi, and Carlos Sainz. I have George Russell, Valtteri Bottas, and Mick Schumacher. And Tyson has Yuki Tsunoda, Fernando Alonso, and Sebastian Vettel. A pretty good mix there, chaps.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not a bad mix
That's
at
a good
all.
mixture.
So yeah, I'll happily take that. Cool, good stuff. Well, so you know which ones we're keeping an eye on. The 9 out of the 20 drivers who will be keenly casting an eye on. So final thoughts, really. Hodders, I think from this weekend there were some results that we did expect in terms of the performance, some that we certainly didn't expect in terms of drivers and teams doing better, and certainly some doing a lot worse than we predicted.
Absolutely, I think the whole thing for this weekend, the rest of the season so far. Matt and I both fans of Joey Anderson series, but to quote Dr. Tiger Neinstein from Terrorhawks, expect the unexpected.
Absolutely, and I think the key question really coming out of Bahrain, Tyson, can Mercedes claw their way back to the front? Because let's face it, they got lucky this weekend.
Yeah, they were very fortunate this weekend with the Red Bull issues, and I think if they can get this porpoising under control, they may have something with the car. We'll just have to wait and see.
We will indeed. Right, so that pretty much rounds up. We will be back next Tuesday for our Saudi Arabia Grand Prix podcast. Obviously, it will be on our YouTube channel. So if you're on our YouTube channel watching this, go back into the videos. It will be in there next week. And obviously, if you're following us on Twitter at DWavedYellows, we'll put the link up in there. Hodders, Tyson, thank you very much for your contributions as always. And of course, thank you to you for listening or for watching. We hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. From all of us, be good, be safe, and be kind. Good night.
See ya.